Teachers.
This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
You know, guys, I just want you to know, all of you to know, that I really appreciate your contributions to the show and all the folks in the chat room. We all come at this from different places and perspectives, but on these mics, we really make that work.
I think it has a lot to do with how you've allowed the show to become what it needs to be and not rigidly hold on to just one vision.
And you found ways to make everyone have an important role and contribute to the overall show.
And we can be honest and do it while we're having fun, which is the best of all situations.
Man, that is just so much love going on. I love it.
Well, that's because we have
A positive culture.
And there it is. Tonight's topic, thinly wrapped up in this little melodrama. Why don't you kick off the show, Chris?
Sure thing, Bob. Welcome to the 347th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast. Tonight we are talking about creating a positive game culture at your table. We're also going to talk about what's going on in our lives in the conversation corner, but before we do that, my name is Chris.
And I'm Phil.
I'm Camden.
And I'm Old Man Logan.
Well then.
See, it was like a little after school special.
That's right.
And now you know. And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe.
I already explained that one to Senda already. That's a freebie.
I would have thought that happened early on, actually.
Yeah, that knowing is half the battle. Yeah, that one and the one to grow on.
Mm-hmm.
So we should get into the show and do the one thing. So Phil, tell me about your one thing from this past week.
One thing, indeed. I ran another Killer Masks game.
So good.
Yeah, Masks is rapidly rising up the chart as one of my favorite PBTA games.
It's a really good PBTA
It's
game.
really good. It's really it fits really well in my wheelhouse. We just basically picked up where we left off last time. We had a big throwdown fight in the superhero museum.
I honestly wish I was in a better place when I was running that game.
Yeah,
because we played like 14 sessions of it.
we did.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, it was okay. It was good. There were really good moments, but I'm sure yours is like way better at this point.
I guess it's hitting all the right places. Like it's doing all the right things.
I'm not going to lie to you. The dynamic at the table is far more entertaining.
Uh-huh.
The game was fun when you ran it, but the table was a little messed up.
The table might have been a little messed up.
Well, and we also Glenn had just joined. Like we were all trying to figure out
We
Glenn.
don't have to talk about it.
Well, whatever.
There's a whole lot of history and drama wrapped
There's
up
a
in
whole
that
lot of history drama
that
wrapped
does not
into it.
exist anymore.
Yeah, but everything just really clicked. It was a lot of fun.
Yep.
I know it's a lot of fun because we don't screw around. Like I got nearly 3 hours of play with only one small break.
Oh, nice.
So that's how I know like the game's dialed in because no one wanted to talk about anything else. No one wanted to do anything else. We just played solid game.
Yep.
Yeah, totally thrilled with it. That was my one killer thing. Masks continues to be my jam.
Yeah. So new thing for the chat room real quick. Well, and for the people that are watching on the stream, the chat is on the stream these days.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so other people are now watching your behavior.
That's right.
Don't embarrass us.
Completely embarrass us.
Don't embarrass us.
There's no way you can embarrass us any more than Phil embarrasses us on a weekly basis.
True.
That's not positive.
By the way, we are explicit. You have been warned.
Actually, that is.
It's like don't do anything I wouldn't do, right? Like it's like basically a hollow.
Wow, that's an open-ended
right.
statement.
It's basically a hollow threat.
I mean, so Camden, for several months, the game was what is the most awkward thing Phil can say on the podcast to make yourself just stop and be like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, and I'm saying maybe not the most supportive idea. I mean, like, fun, sure, but...
That's fair. I suppose that's fair. I don't know. Yeah, right. But maybe we'll talk about that later, right?
Maybe we can. There you go.
Who are we going with? Who's one thing now?
Bob, how about you? What's your thing?
Yeah, so I had an interesting week last week. We had a meeting about a new project that I'm part of the project team for, and it's stuff that's not really user support stuff, but my boss thought that I would be a good fit, and his boss said, yeah, I agree. So they said, the president of the company is actually running this project. And so they're like, yeah, bring him on the team. And we had the first meeting that I was included in last week on Tuesday. And later in the week, my boss's boss, so the one level down from El Presidente, came in to talk to him, my boss, about something. And she looked at me and she goes, by the way, Sue was super impressed with you from that meeting. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, cool. But it was like, I'm just doing the thing, I mean, we're sitting there, we're having a conversation about this software that we're trying to use. And I made a comment at one point. I said, having someone from the user support team on the inside as this project is ramping up, learning how all of this stuff is put together and how it all works, will do nothing but make it easier for the time when somebody asks questions and needs support on this software. Mm-hmm. We've got a guy on the inside who can disseminate that information to the rest of the team, and we have more knowledge about how everything works before the questions start rolling in and we have to try and figure this stuff out on our own. And to me, that's a no-brainer.
That's super smart, yeah.
And apparently that was one of the things that, like, whoa, hey.
Good job, Bob.
So I'm like, all right. Chalk that one up. So, what about you, Camden?
So on this past Saturday, there was an, not indie, but an RPG all-inclusive spotlight at a local game store, Dragon Snack Games. Mm-hmm. And so I ran Kakagami High. There was a game of Kids on Bikes that was run. That, right? Yeah, Glenn ran that. And then Jerry ran Barbarians of Lemuria.
Yeah,
cool. In the evening. And so it was good. I mean, there was probably, I think we had 8 players, somewhere around there, 8 or 9 players that we split up between the two of us. And it was fun. And, everything's got to start someplace. And I think it could grow into a cool opportunity for those games that don't get a lot of love and players that are always looking for something different.
Oh man, I want to go drag some antiques out and just Price of Freedom.
There you go, deep cut RPGs.
Freedom.
Come on, man! That Red Dawn, the role-playing game.
There you go.
That game's actually not that good. I mean, the premise is great. The mechanics are not that good.
And you say that about so many things.
It was the 80s, man. Like, there's
80s tech is like
80s tech feels like 80s tech when you go to run it. Like, there are not too many 80s games that you're like, damn, this thing's as smooth as a game today. Like, it's just like what is it? It's like a '68 Mustang. Like, that car doesn't feel good to ride in. It just looks good, right? Like,
yeah, I used to have a '66 Mustang, and it was like, I loved that car. That car was hard to drive. It was like miserable in the winter. I mean, there was like so much wrong with it. I felt the coolest I've ever felt in my entire life.
Right, when you walk up to it, you're just like,
that's right.
That's every 80s role-playing game.
I had a similar experience. I had a 90 Mustang, and it looked great, but I bought the 4-cylinder. So it was like 3 squirrels and a chipmunk, and the chipmunk was like, on weed or something. And so it was like,
Absolutely. So, Chris, what about you?
Oh, man. That's a good question. What did I write down? Oh, yeah, the gnomes. We played a game.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been trying to balance audio and things like that. I'm going to buy us a compressor so that we don't have these problems anymore.
Yeah.
That's
We're going to crank our game up to 11.
I know exactly how that works now, too. Yeah, so the gnomes on this past Saturday, well, 2 weeks ago Saturday when the podcast people hear it, we played a game called Mortzengersturm.
The Mad Manticore
of the Prismatic
Peaks. Yes.
I'm like that's like infringing on my area peaks.
Yeah. Mortzengersturm. I had to muscle through that 7 times before I got it. Mortzengersturm.
I mean, I was calling the Manticore, any various names from Shakespeare plays. So there was that. Anyways, we had a really good time. The adventure itself is full of puns and ridiculousness and hilariousness. And, of course, it was me and Jen Adcock and Matt Neagley and Chuck. I don't know. What's Chuck's last name?
Oh,
Lauer.
Lauer. Thank you. Yep. And Chuck Lauer. Because, unfortunately, Daniel Kwan couldn't join us, and John Arcadian was running it. And we had a blast. We played for 4 hours, and John put together a really nice overlay. We had some really good maps and things like that. Played over Roll20, streamed it on the Gnomes 2 channel. It was supposed to simulcast on Misdirected Mark. There's like some issue with the simulcasting on Misdirected Mark. I have to fix that. I've been trying to figure out what's going on with it.
Did we get in trouble?
No.
Are we not allowed to simulcast it?
No. I mean, we have affiliate status. There's no reason we shouldn't. Anybody can simulcast, really. So I don't know why we shouldn't be able to. I don't know why it's not working. But everything I've seen, it should be working. But it was really fun. We had a great time. It was ridiculous. Puns were made all over the place, especially when we ran into 2 antlions that were named Freddy and Mercury.
Oh boy.
Then things like I guess another one bit the dust, and
Oh boy.
Oh.
they were the champions, and yeah,
Yeah.
it was
It was a
interesting.
punny time.
That was the point. That was the point.
Yep.
And we hit all of the things that we wanted to hit on that one.
That's
Absolutely.
nice.
Who's left? Anybody left?
No, that's
No,
it.
That's
that's
it?
it.
Cool. I guess we should go to announcements.
Ooh,
Announcements indeed. Iron Edda Accelerated will have been out for a week by the time people on the podcast have heard this. But if you're in the chat room, you actually probably have a copy.
yeah.
I'm looking at the list of people. You probably already had.
Pretty sure you've already
pretty sure
got
you
a
already
copy
got
of this
yours.
sexy ass book.
Yeah, it's on drive-thru. It's available in PDF. It's available in softcover and hardcover. And it already got a really nice 4-star review this morning. And the Twitters had a lot of really nice things to say about the layout, which made me very happy.
Yes.
Because that is a Tim Jones work of art.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
It's one of those things where we like sent Tim off, like Tim go start laying this out, and he sent back the first couple pages, and we were all like, "Damn, Tim!" But it's fantastic looking, and I'm super proud of it. It was great. Working with Tracy was great, and it was really fun to do that as our first Kickstarter.
Yeah.
It took us 31 weeks from start of campaign to deliver book. That's not terrible.
It's less than a year.
Yeah. It's less. Yeah, it's almost
31.
It's almost a half a year.
Yeah.
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 I couldn't say it was less than half a year, unfortunately.
Yeah.
No, but that's okay. We learned. I mean,
Yeah.
we learned a few things about to streamline some things that I think
Yep.
we actually will make Avalon go a little faster. Because there were just a couple of things that we lost along the way. But anyway, it's out. It's available. If you don't have it, you can go to drive-thru and get it. It will start showing up in other places later. Like I submitted to Studio 2 for the summer. So Origins, Gen Con, those kinds of things.
Remind me to ask you later about, because I don't quite know exactly how it works for, we fulfilled through drive-thru, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what does that mean exactly for exclusivity?
nothing.
Nothing? I
No.
thought there was a
There's
thing for
no.
No, because we're not exclusive through drive-thru.
Oh.
It means they just take a higher pay. They just take a higher cut.
that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can shill our stuff anywhere we feel like it.
Sweet. I wasn't sure.
I'm
about
not
that.
beholden to. You can't tell me who I can sell to. 80s punk. It's he can't lock me into something like.
Somebody want to make a note to talk about Hope Punk later? 'Cause
Hope Punk.
We're having a conversation
All
about
right,
what
I'll
Hope
do it.
Punk actually means, if it's really a thing, and if Steven Universe qualifies as Hope Punk. But that's an interesting thing to talk about maybe later. Anyways, next thing, the Queen City Conquest 30-day sale. So there's going to be rooms on Thursday evening. I will be putting those up for sale sometime in the next week. So people can get their Thursday evening rooms if they want. That's been a
neato.
question that's been popping up. Badges are currently 25% off, and sometime this week we should have a list up for all the food stuff that's on sale too. So you'll have all of that information in the coming days.
There's nothing you have to do about the food thing, right? It's you guys are just listing what's going to be available.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the prices are already on the website
Okay.
for the different meals. It's all buffet style type stuff, but like for breakfast it'll be like, scrambled eggs and things like that.
That's awesome.
For
I mean,
lunch.
not a lot of cons have like food as part
yeah.
as.
It's important though if people want it to like buy it now, because that's how they know how much to make.
Yeah. Yeah.
So otherwise there might not be enough if that's what you want to eat.
No, I mean, I love the idea that like at the con I can just like go get my breakfast,
Yeah,
sit
like-
down, eat, and then go play a game. Like
From what I've seen so far, from the list and having conversations, it's like we won't actually have like final menus for things. Like it'll be like there'll be there's going to be like a protein styled sandwich and some things to go with that for lunch, right? Like, and there'll be like some sort of protein and then a series of sides for dinner. Like they won't, but we don't know exactly what those proteins are yet.
Right.
Do you know if they'll have vegetarian and vegan
Yes,
options
we will
for
have
people?
vegetarian and vegan options for people.
Cool.
Awesome.
That is absolutely a thing that will happen.
I mean, I do have to say, like, of the things that were that was tricky about QCC in the past, like
eating?
food was always tough at the
Yeah,
convention
this
center.
will not be much of a problem anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's even harder there because you actually have to drive somewhere to go get food from the college. If you don't eat on
Yeah, if
on
you don't
campus.
use right, but the thing is, like, parking isn't a problem. So if you do go to drive somewhere,
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you're
just
not
go
gonna
back
lose your
and-
you'll just come back.
Yep.
Like
it's all free parking.
yeah,
all
which
that-
is all. I mean, again, many things I loved about the QCC.
Yes, the location was nice and everything. Like
Although
that,
I
but-
did have my trick for how to get rid of most of my parking.
Yeah.
So what you did was you go and park. Like I would park like Wednesday or Thursday at the parking garage, right? But on Sunday nights, no one mans the parking garage. So on Sunday night, you leave because it's free, and then you just come back and park again, and then you only pay for Monday. You only pay for Sunday into Monday.
Well, that's clever.
It worked like I think it worked 2 or 3 years in a row. I stumbled onto it by accident, but after that, I was just like, oh, I'm gonna take my car out on a Sunday night, drive like right around the block, pull right in, get another ticket.
That's funny.
Good times.
Yeah, so that's the QCC 30-day thing, and it's not really 30 days. It's going till the end of March.
Yep. Got another one to talk about.
Yeah, last announcement. The bonus experience Patreon is live, and they've already hit their second goal.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I would highly suggest going and checking out all the cool stuff that you can get from the bonus experience Patreon. Which, if they get to, I think it's $100, they'll start releasing an actual play to patrons.
It's not it's not their own La Croix flavor.
I mean, that might be a thing in the future. I mean, maybe when they get to like $500, that might be.
They're gonna brew their own La Croix flavor.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't,
La Croix.
it feels like they're missing out if they don't do that right.
That's I mean, and that should be pretty inexpensive to put together.
or peanut butter and onion sandwiches for everyone.
For everyone. I mean, between them and Senda, I suppose they could figure out something because Senda's was drinking that that probiotic drink,
Kombucha.
Like,
Yeah.
what the hell is kombucha?
Well, go ahead, Camden, because you were from Colorado.
It's basically it's a drinkable vinegar. Basically, is what it is. So it's slightly effervescent and has a mother the same way you would in a vinegar.
Huh? Does that taste good?
It depends. I mean, it really does. There's some that are you would be hard pressed. Most people wouldn't think twice about it. Others are pretty astringently vinegary.
Can you get that around here?
Yeah,
absolutely.
maybe Wegmans.
I have to go try some, see what it's all about.
Yeah, I've had that same reaction. I'm like, I don't know. Like, it seems cultured vinegar. Not selling me on anything that's like, well, it's like flavored vinegar.
Well, I mean, it's a tea base, but
Yeah.
ultimately, what it is, I mean, it's pretty. So you're using tea instead of fruit juice.
All right, let's move on.
I'm waiting for Senda to like blow up in the chat room because we started,
Talking about kombucha.
Yeah.
I was sort of poking that bear. To see if she would.
she has a machine at work that dispenses it.
I heard that too.
That's,
Whoa, a
That's
kombucha machine.
super Denver thing.
Did she actually talk about that on the podcast? I can't remember.
No, I don't remember. I think she talked about it on our podcast.
She talked about it on Pandas, right? Like she talked about her smart water machine.
Yeah, we exchanged pictures because she showed me the picture of her water machine at work, which is like coconut carbon filtered, like sparkling water, and I took a picture of the like 1970s water fountain that's outside my office, like that's probably like with lead pipes, right? Like,
Oh yeah, that thing. That water that comes out of that thing, Phil, that's choice.
yeah, it's
Choice for putting him in the grave.
double the lead. Yeah.
I mean, so if you're not listening to Pandas Talking Games for the wonderful game mastering advice and game advice, like you should totally be listening to for the wonderful water conversations.
That's right.
All right, let's move on to our workshop where we're going to talk about positive play culture. So here, let me do that bumper thing. You ready? Who's doing that? Who's doing it?
Am I? Okay.
I feel like Camden should, but Camden would be like so gentle with it, even though there's like this. rock and roll
But for
background.
positive play culture, that might be the right
Workshop.
That's right.
Workshop.
play culture. Positive play culture. Be nice to one another. Be friendly. play good games, but more importantly, be nice to each other.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. Oh, this isn't color coded.
All right.
I guess I'll start.
I don't know. It's like a free for all now.
Yeah, right.
man.
So
Just-
last week we started talking about the idea of a positive play culture. And it was one of those things that as we started to talk about it, we realized that we should kind of break it out into its own episode. So here we are. So let's get into this by first defining positive play culture. So hit me, Definition Panda.
Yep. So we're gonna do it a little different tonight, rather than me
What?
just
You're
rather
changing
than
things up on the fly. I mean, that's not really true.
rather than me just saying what positive play culture is. I thought we would actually talk about elements that go into positive play culture, because I don't think there's one simple definition for this. I think there's a lot of components that go into it. So yeah, let's just talk about that. What are some of the components that make up a positive play culture?
All right.
Yeah,
I'll jump in.
You're in.
So I think that for like most healthy cultures of any kind, let alone play culture, you need healthy, honest communication. So there needs to be an agreed upon way to express joy, express struggles, express anger, express sadness, so that everyone is being heard, everyone has agency and voice inside of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can't say like, you know, hey, I'm uncomfortable with that move you made, or that was a dick move, whatever, like,
Yeah.
whatever the right way to say that is in the group. Yeah. Like, I mean, how can you do anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris?
So I think to go along with that, and part of healthy, honest communication is being willing to listen and trying to understand what people are saying when they're speaking to you. Because sometimes we can have a hard time understanding when people are trying to explain things to us. So like asking gentle, kind, considerate questions, not taking offense to when people say certain things, trying to just understand what the actual issues or joys or good and bad things are at the table. Like, I think that is a really important thing about positive play culture.
Yeah, and I think that rides the, like, you have to, the good version of that is that the bad version of that is like justify your actions to me.
Yeah.
Right, like sell me on like why I'm wrong.
We don't want that.
Right.
That's not at all.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely.
Bob, what about you?
Yeah, so acceptance of the fellow gamers at your table. I mean, we're all there for the same reason, ostensibly, to play a game and have some fun, right? Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what you look like on the outside. None of that. We're all gamers. We're at the table to have fun. You know, accept the people that are there and accept them for who they are and what they're there for.
Awesome.
Phil?
I think, fits in with everyone else's, which is kindness. Like, it's be kind, and that's not just like kind to each other personally, but that is kind in terms of sharing spotlights, of doing things like not taking actions that are going to hurt other players or other characters, like unless that's where you're going in the story, right? Like, but being kind to each other. I don't necessarily think we do that enough, and sometimes. And I know this from experience, like sometimes game groups have weird little social cliques and dynamics, and sometimes they're not always, sometimes not everyone is kind to each other at the table. Like people get berated. I mean, truthfully, this happened in my old game group. Like it happened a lot to Bob. And, there were just people who weren't kind.
Really? Who knew?
Who called it out as Chris.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, being kind to one another, like it kind of goes to what Bob's saying. Like we're here to play a game. We're not here to bag on each other. We're not here to work out even if we are here to work out our frustrations, we're here to work them out in the game, not through the other players.
Yep.
Yeah. And I know I've seen in a lot of circumstances, people who often feel like they don't have agency in their life can have agency in the game. And sometimes that bleeds out into trying to make themselves feel better by taking another person at the table and belittling or pushing them down. And that's never a good thing.
It's ugly.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's terrible, actually. I hate seeing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna ask a loaded question.
Right.
Why not?
Sure.
Let me ask the loaded question.
It's what we do
It's
here.
It's always good to let me do it because I can be the bad guy. It's fine. Why is this even important? I mean, we're here just to play a game, right? Why don't we just focus on playing the game, huh, Camden?
Oh yeah.
I mean, how many times have we? I mean, to be honest, because I mean, I wrote this loaded question prep in the show, right? But how many times have you seen that in a chat room or in a discussion, right? Like, not just here to play the game.
How many times has that been directed at me on the internet?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so go ahead, start. Like, it's
All right. I've got big feels about this.
Are you okay? Because I mean, I don't want you to. I mean, that could be like triggery for you.
No, it's
right.
Yeah, I'm all right.
Cool? Okay.
I'm okay. I got some feelings.
Safe space. We're
so-
going to trust you.
I couldn't even put down show notes for this because I have such big feelings about it. So to me, I'm 49 years old. I've watched culture in the world change. To me, that's sort of like asking, like, hey, why can't I put blackface in my commercial anymore? Hey, why is this transphobic story that I wrote, why do people have a problem with it? Maybe we should not do this because we're decent human beings, because we don't want an exclusionary, racist, sexist, homophobic hobby anymore. But that's just me.
That sounds good. I'm with you.
I don't think it's just you,
Yeah.
right? Like,
I'm pretty sure it's not just you.
It's not just you.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, to me, I understand, the reality is I understand the question, and I understand the number of times I will have to answer this over and over and over again. And I understand that if you're coming at it from, I don't want to say a narcissistic point of view, but from a privileged point of view, where you've never had to deal with any of these things, it seems like, well, why is it a big deal? Because I get together with my friends and I don't have to worry about it, and I play, and it's joyful, and why wouldn't anybody else just do the same thing? And that doesn't acknowledge anybody else's experience except for your own.
I mean, the thing that I've run into, like, looking back over my past groups, is like, even though we were privileged, like, we weren't always great to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just like, sometimes we were shitty to each other.
Well, people tend to be shitty to each other.
Yeah, I mean, like, we just like, we weren't good at it. Like, I mean. And I know that excuse, right? Like, I'm just here to play the game. Like, I just, but like, you can't separate the humans who are playing the game from the game.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's why Bleed works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because you can't separate them.
Well, I mean,
Good.
these things are hard for, I don't know. It's tricky for me to talk about because, I've been thumping this boat for like 7 years, literally thumping this boat for 7 years. But I don't know, like I'm a straight white guy. Like, it's hard for me to be like, where you're coming from, because you're right. Like, because the way that I tend to look at it is that, like, it is often a point of, people don't understand that from a point of privilege, because it's also a point of ignorance because they don't understand.
Yeah.
And that's their privileged viewpoint causes them to be ignorant because they don't have that same life experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I can usually forgive that the first or the second time because they don't know, but that's the point where somebody has to be the person that educates, right?
Yeah.
And that can be frustrating and difficult over the course of time, especially if you are one of those marginalized people that don't get it. Because, like, why do I have to explain this to you over and over and over and over again?
Can I put an asterisk for a second? What was that? There was a fantastic article that came out this week about just that topic. It was an amazing read. Like, I forget who.
I think it was that the one by it was Shattered Glass on a Parquet Floor. Is that the one you're thinking about?
I think so.
That was Janiyah Kemper.
Yes.
She's a complete badass. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong.
Right. It was a fantastic piece, Chris, and it was exactly about that, about like how tired it can be to be like the person that everybody comes to at a con or in a space or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. I didn't want to derail you, but it was such a good post that it's worth making sure that it got.
So like a year and a half ago, I think it was a year and a half ago, Kate Bullock put out this article about some of that stuff, and it sparked a lot of controversy and talk. And I actually went to her and I was like, on the internet, I was like, so, like, what can we do to make this better? and she was tired and exhausted, and I got that. And of course I didn't come and explain myself properly. Like I didn't do a good job of being like, I get what you're talking about. I understand where you're coming from. I am more than willing to jump on this on the cause that you are making way more known because of who you are than I've been able to do for the last 5 years because of who I am. So like, what can I do to help? And that was not how it came off, and it came off poorly, and she was exhausted. And it took her a few days to gather her strength before she could put out another response that would actually like be in that space of like being educational, but like, because people get exhausted sometimes.
Yep.
So like, it's really important. I think it's important on both sides. It's important for people that look like me and are of my sexual preferences to be understanding and compassionate and work towards making better play cultures at tables and better, spaces in the world just in general. And I think it's important for people who are marginalized to make sure that they do the best that they can to continue educating while also taking the time to take care of themselves so that they can be positive forces in the world. It's kind of both sides of the coin, if you ask me.
Well, I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent, and I understand that people that come from marginalized communities are always put in a position where a lot of that education and emotional labor falls on their shoulders. And I mean, certainly like Senda, and she's a super geek, is a great example of that. What Senda and Andy have created is fantastic. It's important. And the number of times that they have to explain to people over and over again why it's important will not end anytime soon.
No.
The flip side of that is also that when you explain to somebody, hey, this is why that's racist and this is what you can do to make it better, and their response, which you've heard a million times before, is, well, I've never seen that. I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah.
But you want to put your head through a wall at some point.
Yes, because that's just somebody who's not listening.
Yeah, and I think that there is a certain there should be responsibility on all of us to educate ourselves, to make sure that when there is a community, when there is whatever we're doing in the world, that we're working to actively educate ourselves and make things better.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that I remember it took me a long time to concretely piece together exactly the depth of privilege that I had. And in part it was, I'm trying to remember if it was, I think it was John Scalzi who wrote that essay about playing life on easy mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Like, if life's a video game, like playing White Dude is the easiest version of the game.
It's true.
And then it was a lot of talking, like it was just a lot of talking with Senda about things like it took me it took me a little while to realize it. Like, I can sit down at any game table. No one will say a word to me. It doesn't matter what game it is. It doesn't mean, and I'm terrible with mechanics. Like I could sit down at the most complicated game, take out my pencil, and people will just be like, "Cool, you're here." No one's gonna ask me like, "Did you play version whatever?" Like, I'm never gonna get checked. And that doesn't mean but that means that that's not true for everyone else, right? Like, that's part of starting to recognize that. And I was one of those people years and years ago who'd be like, "Oh, I never saw that. I never saw it because I was never looking for it, because it never happened to me." And part of that progress was coming to realize well, there's a whole lot of world going on outside of you. You need to maybe you should look around and and actually pay attention to it. It is easy to fall into that trap. And I didn't play at a lot of conventions for a long time. I played within my group, but my groups for a long time suffered from a lot of dude bro. They weren't racist, but they were sexist. They were not
Uncomfortably so, actually.
Yes, they were. I mean, you came in.
I was uncomfortable.
You came in on the cusp of all of that changing.
Yeah,
and it was not a good culture. And like I said, it was we would never have tolerated blackface at the table, but we were tolerating all manner of sexism, mild sexism at the constantly. And it like that required a shift. Like it required recognizing it and making the shift.
Yeah, I always the example I like to use when people are like, no, gaming's changed, it's growing, it's changing, and it has. But if most people walked into a gaming convention, walked into one of the big ballrooms, and it was 80% African American women, almost every single person would think they were in the wrong place, that they had accidentally wandered in. If it was 99% white dudes, you wouldn't even register on your radar.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, exactly.
Yep.
I mean, it would be...
If it was 100% white dudes, it wouldn't even register on your radar.
Well, I remember last year, and I know we talked about this on the show, like one of the things I was blown away about playing at Breakout was just how not white all my tables were. And I was like so excited because it was an actual occasion where it was like me and maybe one other player were white at the table, and it was everybody else, and it was like, this is great. And I remember saying that to Kate, I've never played at a convention where diversity had been so it had been so diverse, and even including trans. Like I never had like more than one trans player in a game ever. Like it was, I mean, I remember that was like my takeaway from Breakout was just like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find those spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's what's growing and changing is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so we were still on the topic of like the why, right? Like
The why.
I mean, it was, I see that excuse. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I just eye roll really hard when I see that excuse, but it's I hate that excuse.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't acknowledge that there's a people component to games. There is absolutely a people component to games. Like you can't play a game in the absence of people. And so when you start using that excuse, like I'm only here to play the game, like it's, or I don't know. I just like, there've been, there was a con that did it, that put out their statement, right? Like they have no harassment policy, but like, don't bring your politics to this game. Like you can't not bring your politics to the game.
Yeah.
You are a person. Like you are tied up into all of those things, whether you want to be or not. Like, I don't know. You want to say something?
No.
No, you don't.
It's hard for me to talk about this stuff. I mean, so it's hard for me to talk about this stuff these days because, like, I don't know. Like, so the thing is like the people that are listening to us, they all know me, right? And they know generally what I stand for and what's important to me. But there are still people that I run into, like I still have to be super careful because I don't always represent myself the way that I want to be perceived in the world. Like I try to, but then I get, accused of being a lot of things. So, sometimes I just have to be quiet.
That's fair. I mean, I think there's
also, like, I could just let Camden say it, and he'll just say it for me these days.
So Camden will do your emotional labor for you.
It's not that you're doing my emotional labor. Like, what am I going to say that's going to be better than what you're going to... If I say the same thing that you say, and you say it, it's going to have more impact.
Yeah, I think
like, I actually am a little upset that you said that for me, because I don't want you to do my emotional labor. I just want this show to be more effective. So therefore, you saying it for me is better.
Yeah, but I think that there is a lot of... if you were to talk over me, that would be one issue. But the power of having a straight white guy say, this is where I draw the line in the sand. This is the same thing that Senda would say, or I would say, or Kate would say, or Misha would say, and have it come out of your mouth without making it about you, I think has a lot of power in it too.
Yeah, and I think I do that on a pretty consistent weekly basis. So
we certainly all try. There's no question about
right.
that.
I mean, I think that's where we always try to shoot for.
I'm not saying you just said that you didn't feel like there was a place for you to give your opinion here, and I think that it is that there is. I mean, even if we're saying the same thing, even if you say I agree with Camden and here's where I'm coming from, I think that has value and power.
Okay, I don't disagree.
Okay,
all right.
So yeah, yes, you can't separate these things.
Yeah.
They do show up at the table, and
Yeah, honestly, if I'm going to say where I think that the best place that my voice is utilized, it's talking to other people that are like me. Because
yeah, I mean,
Yep.
I think there's
Yeah.
absolutely value in allowing like not having people of color have to do that work at a table when any one of us could just turn around and be like, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
we don't do like you don't have to do this work like this time we can do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess what I was saying is yeah, I mean, I can just let you say it and agree with you, and I tend to draw my lines too. Like I know when I don't speak when I don't have to anymore.
Okay.
So like if I see something that needs to be corrected, then I will do my best to correct it, and I will of course give my opinion. But I don't know, like
No, I get that.
I am having to rephrase a lot of things because of several conversations that we've had.
Yeah. No.
And so like I haven't quite figured out what the new voice is yet and where I need to come from yet without sounding like an idiot.
Okay. No, I understand what you're saying, and I understand and appreciate the caution involved in that too. I recently, with everything that's going on, they're like, I get a lot of email recently and messages
Really,
saying,
I would have guessed.
"Hey, you're not a white dude. Tell us what to do. Tell us what to say. Introduce me." And I, that's great, and I'm happy to do that work.
So that's the problem. Like I used to think I used to know what I was doing, and then after just 2 or 3 conversations with you, I'm like, well, apparently I don't know what I'm doing.
But you're listening, and that's the important part. And
Yeah.
and as we're here, we're friends, we're in this project together. Sometimes I'm going to say, "Hey," and you're going to push back, or you're going to listen, or whatever, and we have those conversations, and it all grows from there.
Yeah.
So I don't ever want you to not express yourself because I've got more street cred as a not white guy or whatever.
Well, it's not about not expressing myself. I'm just not sure the best way to do that yet.
Yeah.
Going forward. I mean, especially on the show, because the show is, So here's the thing. So 5 years ago, I was doing what Phil and you do now. Phil from the queer point of view, and you from the colored point of view. Like, there wasn't anybody else to do it, so I had to do it. I don't have to anymore. Like, I will support and be right there for you, but I don't have to take the lead on that stuff. Because it's more like, and that's just from the show point of view, right? Like,
Yeah.
if we're just sitting around talking, you've heard me. Like, I am not afraid to express how I feel about things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But here I don't have to do that anymore as much. I still will, and I'll still just back you both, but I don't have to say it as much as I used to, because it doesn't mean as much.
Okay.
Because this is a form of entertainment, right? Also, infotainment. We've always been about that.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah.
All right. I'm gonna
positive podcast culture.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna rein it in a little bit just because we got a little long on this one. Not
What?
that wasn't bad, that wasn't good, but I mean,
Yeah.
we do have to keep going on the thing. One of the reasons why we do this, why can't we just play the game? Because some people sit down at the table and they have strong, dominant personalities, and while they may not be consciously attempting to take over, they can do it without thinking. And if you've got someone that's got a super dominant personality at a table with someone who's more introverted and maybe somebody's a little meek, that person can get drowned out. And it may not even be a malicious choice.
Yeah.
And so, we have to work on that table culture and be like, look, you need to, step back a half a minute, and we need to try and help bring this person out so that we can all partake and enjoy ourselves and have a good time.
Yeah.
So, you have to be conscious of what you've got at the table, so that you can make it a good place.
That's having that's having the interest in actually caring enough that everyone else is going to have a good
Yes.
time. Like,
So no, keep going. Sorry.
No.
I just saw the most ridiculous thing in chat that I'm just shaking my head about it. I'm like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand people in general, like that would think that, like, really, because someone is too femme, they're not a geek. That is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
People are stupid.
I mean, not to go
Now,
off.
it's true, unfortunately.
Right,
That's the problem.
But not to go off on a huge tangent. I mean, like, there are times where I don't feel like I'm enough of a geek, and it's not because of the way I dress, but it's because I don't consume certain medias.
What does that even mean?
Well, I mean, what it means is what it comes down to is it's gatekeeping.
Yeah, gatekeeping
Right?
sucks.
It's gatekeeping. You don't look like me, therefore you can't be, like, you're not part of my spaces.
Once again, let me restate.
Well, it is stupid. Well, it is stupid.
Also,
Yes.
also, like, anybody who says that, you can just go away. I don't need you here.
I mean, there is a thing that, like, there was a story, and it happened to send I'll tell the story. She was at a con, and she asked some random guy, I think she was asking, like, what game was being played at the table, and the guy launched into, like, a whole explanation of, like, how role-playing games worked. And I told her, I was like, look, the next time it happens, take out your phone, call me, and just hand the person the phone. So I could just be like, do you know who you're talking to? Do you want to stop running your mouth right now? Like,
Right?
do you know? I mean, but like that, like it's that stuff, right? And it's not the. I mean, in that case, it's not malicious. It's the worst. It's even worse than the malicious one. It's the quote helpful.
Yeah.
I'm being.
It's not helpful.
It's
I'm being
oblivious to the fact that, you know, gamers come in many forms.
Dude, what's the rule? The vampire rule.
Well, that's my new rule, right? I'm not showing up unless I'm invited.
Unless you
Right.
ask me for my opinion, I'm not going to give it to
I'm not
you.
crashing in on somebody's Twitter.
I thought it was don't play vampire. I didn't.
That is the
True,
other
that's the other vampire rule.
That's rule 2 for vampire.
No, but on social media, that's my new approach. Is I'm a vampire. Don't come crashing into your tweet. I wait till be invited in. Like that's.
This is like that. What?
Well, actually.
It's starting to feel like we can be better episode. We could do part
Yeah.
2.
Well, I mean, it was years ago when we did that.
it was
We can be
200,
better.
episode 220 or something.
Right, like I mean,
Yeah, maybe time for another one.
so it is. I mean, it is a thing we've actually talked about, and
it's a thing we've been talking about for like years.
I know
Yeah.
it's an evolving thing. I mean, I
Of course,
certainly.
it should always be brought up. It should
Yeah.
be constantly reaffirmed.
I mean, I am actually embarrassed about my previous play culture. Like, I was fortunate that, like, I was over it before I met Senda, before I met, like, a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I try to go tell those stories, and I'm like, look,
is
there's some bad, like, we were just not good.
It is one of the things I am more proud of is the fact that I helped make that a better space.
Yeah, you derailed that group nicely.
I mean,
In all the right, listen,
In all the right ways, yes.
in all the right ways, man. Like, you came in, you shook that whole group up, and in the aftermath, the group was much better for it.
You opened my eyes. I was sitting at the table not even realizing that I was being bullied.
Yeah.
It was
this is the
just
thing. Like, you got to be really careful about stuff like that. Like, so, like, I hate bullies, but you got to be careful because I was bullied a lot when I was a kid, and not just by bullies, but by like my dad and his friends, right? Like, because you know that was their culture too, which fucking blows.
Yeah.
But you know, like I was a nerd. Like I played a lot. I played sports too, but I was totally a nerd. So like, but you got to be careful because like if you learn how to fight bullies, you can sometimes become the thing that you learned how to fight, right? So
yeah.
there's like a fine line that you have to walk, and that's I don't know. I used to yell a lot on the internet, especially on this show in the first couple of years. I don't do that anymore because it's not helpful, right? Like,
Yeah.
So positive play culture. Don't be a
Well,
bully. Don't yell.
I,
at
did,
the
I
table.
did that with Camden. I think in the summer, there was a moment where like I don't like bullies either, and I was also bullied.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be too stereotypical, but I also am Italian, and I also was raised in a like not so law abiding section of Italian family, to say the least. Let's just say that in the cigarette vending business. So I had said to you, I remember the story because it was that it was the guy from oh god, I don't even want to say the name of a show, and I don't even remember it. But that troll, that YouTube troll, who's just who you know who got eventually kicked out of Magic or whatever, ran like a bunch of people out of the hobby, and then like was in a bar in Gen Con and got punched in the face, and I like lacked all sympathy. Like I was like my actual Italian heritage was like, well, these things happen. And I remember, like, you were, like, a little uncomfortable by it because you didn't, like, I laughed at it and you were like, and I was like, oh boy, like, did I say that? Like, I know my sentiment is, like, I hate bullies, but, like, I was really kind of, and, you know, it's kind of a shortcoming. Like, I wasn't very sad that somebody, like, punched this guy in the face. Like,
so wrong is wrong.
Yeah.
And just because somebody does something wrong does not give you the right, or give anybody the right to do something else wrong to make that right.
no, and that's actually a thing. That's actually a thing I actively have to work at, because there are times where I'm like, you know what I want to do is, like, I want to use my privilege to send internet trolls death threats. Like, I just, like, not that that's good or constructive,
Exactly.
but it's
That's
like, my knee-jerk reaction is like, I feel like they should be dished their own medicine. Like, I can write hateful tweets.
It's like the recent fallout on the internet in the role-playing game industry. Like, yes, it seems like some amount of justice was served. Now, all the hateful other stuff that got said, like, that is not helpful or good at all. Like, I'm with you. Like, I knew what was going on, and then, like, you came in and you were like, this is tiring, and then I listened to Phil and said, like, this is tiring. I'm like, I get it. Like, the right thing happened, but there's a lot of bad that is going on.
Oh, there was some spillage.
Yeah.
There was some unnecessary spillage that happened.
And I mean, and I come at it from a slightly different point of view than you do also, Phil, in that, you know, to be perfectly honest, if Ken Hite walks up to somebody and they're lipping off to him and he gets pissed and he punches him, that's one thing, and the consequences of that are one thing. If Chris Spivey does that, it's, you know, no matter what you say, the consequences of that, an angry black man punching somebody in the middle of a bar, as to, oh, Ken, those are, I mean, not that either of them are going to be acceptable.
Nope.
But the long-term repercussions are going to be completely different. And then, so my reaction is like, okay, who did that? You know, like, if the same thing, if Senda does it, it's a different reaction. It's, I mean, there are...
Yeah, it's you're right. There's a completely different set of standards, unfortunately, for those examples, which sucks.
Yeah, I mean, and when you're talking about your family, those are people in a position of power that know what's going to happen and have control over what's going to happen. And I understand, I understand as a man, certainly, that the privilege that carries with me and the things that affords me in this world and the power that I feel because of that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not throwing shade on but
no, in my weaker moments, like, I want to wield whatever privilege I have, like a bat, right? Like, it's not good. It's not the right thing to do. It's just like, well, I have it. I might as well start swinging it at somebody.
It's
right?
an understandable
yeah.
reflex to have that feeling.
It is.
The important part is you see that, you recognize it in yourself, and you go, yeah, that's not the thing to do. And you say, I'm not.
It's actually why during the Zach S thing, I did not actually tweet as much as I retweeted. Mm-hmm. I did not speak, and there were people who were doing great jobs speaking, like Dungeon Commander and a bunch of other people, and I just made it an effort to just retweet those people because I was like, I'm gonna say something dumb, like I'm angry. Because this is the bully that I've wanted to see taken down forever. Mm-hmm. And I got super excited about it because I was like, the comeuppance time has happened. Now, I did my part. Like, I did keep tweeting at bigger organizations, like, get your shit together.
See, that's the helpful thing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right? Like, I think that those are the right things to do. Like, all right, like, what is the actual right thing that should happen? This person should not be allowed to function in our community anymore. I think in this particular case, not in every case, but in this particular case, that was the right thing to do.
Oh, in that case, a full deplatforming was exactly the right thing to do.
I mean, that is not always the right answer.
No.
Yeah.
Because there is a room in life for restorative justice. This was a person who was beyond those. Like,
I also agree with that.
yeah.
I mean, not that my opinion mattered all that much, but you know.
No, I mean, listen, when it comes to his behavior, it was just shitty behavior.
It was.
Yeah.
Just on, like, at a human level, it was consistent shitty behavior. It just had to go.
Yeah.
But I also had to do things like I curbed myself and did not yell at the Ennies, like, I'm not going to submit anything if you don't get rid of him. I waited.
Yeah, but
right.
But there are other individuals out there that, like, you know, have been talked about, called out, whatnot, even including myself to a certain extent, which, it's about having a conversation and making sure that the person's not actually the asshole that everybody thinks they are, or that they are willing to, and then demonstrate change over a period of time.
Yeah.
Well, and there's intent, right? I mean, like, Zach had no intentions of doing anything except what Zach did, which was terrorize the internet.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, Zach, like many other abusers like that, his immediate reaction was, "No, I never did that.
Of course,
it's all their fault. It's all their problem. They're trying to get me. Everyone's trying to get me."
There's a flow chart.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can refer.
There's
to
a literal flow chart.
There's literally a flow chart. You can refer to how it works. Yeah. So I mean, so inevitably one cannot talk about good table culture without kind of getting into all of these.
We've gone way off.
We did.
So-
We're going to come back. We're going to come back now.
Let's take a break
Yes.
real quick. And in taking a break, let's talk about another show on the Misdirected Mark podcast,
What?
the Wednesday Evening Podcast All-Stars. Brett, Tom, Kevin, myself, and Andy get together and play games that get edited down into an audio drama for your ears. Join this crew of all-star players as they create stories from the games you love. And yes, I will call them all-star players because I named the podcast,
Yes.
so that's fine.
You get to do that.
Soon, the Dresden Files arc that we played will be coming out.
Oh, neat.
The idea is to edit it all before I start releasing any of it, and then release it weekly until
Yeah.
it's done. Like, I think that's how I want to release these from now on. I used to release them every other week. It's not how I want to do it anymore. I want to kind of release them all.
Yeah, that gets more close to serial audio drama.
Yeah, then I can, if I want to, I can just give all of it at once to the patrons,
Oh, nice.
so that patrons can just get everything.
Binge time.
Yep.
I'm going to say to send us comment in the chat room. I am going to say his name because,
I'm not
it's
scared
a
of Voldemort
ghost.
anymore.
Right, it's a ghost. Why am
Yeah.
I afraid of a ghost? Ghosts don't exist.
That's right.
Neither does he.
So I want to touch back on what Bob said earlier when we were actually talking about the topic.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the topic.
So, and I agree with you, Bob, 100%. I think that when you bring that idea of making space for people who are quieter and making sure that everyone has a voice, then when you are playing games that are more story driven or maybe not, or facilitatorless at all, the GM-less games, you've already built a culture inside of that table where everybody kind of knows the rules and one person doesn't automatically just jump into that role where they start commanding, telling people. And I think that's really important.
The alpha.
The alpha. You use that power for, you should use that power responsibly if you're going to be that person.
Yeah.
There's ways to do that.
I mean, listen, the alpha gamers in board games are bad. Alpha gamers in story games are also just equally awful.
It's pretty accurate.
I'm going to tell you how to story correctly.
Oh man, my horror story of Swords Without Master.
There's a good balance of offering ideas versus let me tell you what your character does.
Yeah.
I was actually guilty of that when we played Blades because the way that the people at the table were playing the game, in my mind, were not matching up with what the mechanics were doing, and I got mad. I was like,
Chris was not having a good
Yeah,
experience.
I mean, you struggled a lot with that game.
well, also, Phil was playing the game as written because that's what Phil does, and I'm like, we're all gonna fucking die. And guess what? Sure enough, we all got fucked up beyond belief.
I mean, I like playing games the way they're written.
Stop playing pretend wrong.
No, that's not playing pretend wrong. Stop playing pretend and getting us killed at the same time.
I mean, there were
Yeah.
to your point though, there were some session zero issues with that game.
To be fair, the story that the other players were telling at the table, I was actually into it, but I knew it was going to happen to us, right? Mechanically. So I mean, I had a problem with that. But
Chris is I want no outside. I want no roles outside of the mission because I don't want to potentially have to spend stress anywhere except on the mission. And I'm like, nah, make a roll in the middle of free play.
But I mean, it's my own fault. I should have been we need to stop and talk about how to play the game.
But you did the
and what we're
responsible
going
thing.
to do. I quit. I
You
was
did.
like, I need to excuse myself from this because I'm ruining
That's fantastic.
the fun at the table. It was my fault.
Yeah.
I mean, you did the thing. The rest of the group was with it, and you were like, I'm not fitting into this.
Yeah.
And I mean, I found myself in that same position where I'm not getting what I need out of the group where, 4 or 5 other people are. Then that's time for you to, instead of
it's
insisting
time
that
to
they
leave.
do what you're
That's what I did.
Yeah.
And that's the
I love
not
that.
and that's the not being selfish, right? If again we talk about good positive play culture, that's recognizing everyone else at this table's having fun, it might be me.
Yeah.
And maybe I shouldn't be playing this game.
So speaking of setting and enforcing positive,
Yeah, here we go.
Look at that.
Wow.
We're almost through the intro.
Chris, nice job. Nice segue.
how
Good
do we
job.
do that in a one shot or a convention game? So
Yeah.
to me, I'll go first since my name's on the top of the list.
Perfect.
Being clear and upfront about what is going to be happening and how play will proceed is important to me because that is not what happened in that example.
Yeah.
I was like, we should. I even tried in the middle of the game to be like, we should probably play this game the way it's written and not the way that we feel like telling the story because the way we want to tell the story is not good. And everybody was like, no, we're good the way it is. That's why I left. I'm like, you're right. You all want to play this game not the way that I want to play the game. I'm just going to excuse myself. So being clear and upfront about that stuff would save things like that from happening. That stress and friction. So what about you, Bob?
Yeah, so don't be afraid to ask someone to leave the table if they're toxic. I mean, if you've got a problem player that's just messing it up for everybody, you know,
Hey, there's ways.
especially if it's a convention game, you're like, look, we're all trying to do a thing here, and you're just counter to everything we're trying to do.
You know, I don't think I've ever
Maybe
actually done
you
that
should.
once.
Maybe you should find a different game that is more suited to what you want to do.
I don't think I've done it once, and I probably should have a number of times. That's on me.
I can think of a few places where I did not like. I wasn't in any way threatened or in any kind of danger or anything, but there are a couple times where I should have been more vocal about telling somebody no,
I wasn't. For
I'm,
those,
not this way.
for those
Like,
listening,
not-
I wasn't laughing at Phil. I was laughing at something I read in the chat.
Yeah.
yeah.
This shit's way too serious to laugh at, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, toxic people gotta. I mean, there's, it's not a matter of how do I get through the next couple hours if somebody's being toxic.
And said it in the chat room. Life's too short. Don't play with people you can't have fun with. Don't be like, I don't want to. Nope. If they're toxic.
Well, I was I showed up to a convention game once, and it's the only time I've ever done it, but showed up, saw who the GM was, and turned around and walked away because it was going to be a train wreck. And not only was I not going to have fun, but I was probably going to actively ruin somebody else's time because I was going to be angry the entire 4 hours that we were sitting there.
Right, and I mean that's a case where you actually the person, especially if it's. I'm assuming this was a local game scene where you kind of knew the player, the people who were doing stuff. But yeah, that's I mean it's a total crapshoot when you sit down at a table at a con with strangers. You don't know, and same thing if you're running a game, right? You don't know who's sitting down at your table, it's tough to do that, right? It's not easy. It's uncomfortable to tell somebody to leave a table. And because of that, a lot of times we don't do it. It's the uncomfortable part. We humans don't. A lot of people don't like confrontation.
I've left games and I've left campaigns, but I've never asked somebody to leave a game or a campaign.
I was at a con this last year, and a guy was starting to complain in the middle of we're in the last quarter of a 4-hour slot, and I said, hey, I actually stopped because he made this loud proclamation in the middle of the game, and I said, hey, I have an open table policy. You are free to leave without any guilt or anything. I want you to enjoy your time at the con. If you're not having a good time, then, let's just part ways, no hard feelings. If you want to stay here, that's great. This is what I need from you. But aside from that, just, go and be free. Live a happy life.
Don't suffer through this and make the rest of us suffer with you.
And he chose to stay, but that was enough to get him back on board so that he wasn't a complainosaurus for the rest of the game.
So the way that Camden just explained that is the way that everybody should do that, because I've done that speech before, but it wasn't that nice. It was more like, you are ruining the fun of the other people at this table. Either you can leave or you can stay and buy into what's going on here. Your way is way better than mine. I mean, the person stayed because I called them out for being a dick.
Yeah, but that doesn't always make people feel...
Once again, I was being a dick too. So one wrong does not make a wrong. You should not solve a wrong with a wrong.
Yeah.
Camden's more loving, kinder ways, the better.
There you go.
The thing I was going to tack onto it, my answer to this was about integrate your culture into the setup of the game. Like when you are like, especially when you're doing a one shot, you are often spending at least the first half hour kind of getting everybody organized. Like whether you're doing, picking playbooks and making characters, or you're explaining the world or whatever. But it is in those spaces where I do try to explain, like, hey, we're gonna, hey, we're gonna play Long Live the Queen. And we're not gonna we're not beating anyone to death with sexism in this game.
Yeah.
Like there is gender inequality, but it's not going to be it's not going to be uncomfortable. There's an unavoidable portion of Long Live the Queen where your scale socially is different if you are female or male, present female or male, because it still is 17th century France. But at the same time, there's a whole bunch of sexism content that we don't put into the game, and that I don't expect people to put into the game. Those kinds of things. But I think expectation setting right at the table and doing it in your introductions. So having the open door policy and explaining it also right at the front of the game, right?
Yep.
Like, we're going to play with the open door policy. If this isn't doing it for you at any moment, it's okay.
Yep.
I do that with Turning Point, but I do it I've often done it for safety purposes. Like if this game gets heavy for any reason and you got to get out, like just go. You are more important than the game is. The game will be fine. Don't worry about the rest of us.
Yep.
But it is also for bad behavior.
Yeah, I really do believe in an open table policy for any reason.
I do too. I don't want anyone hunkering down emotionally.
I've been that person.
Yeah.
And it would have been great if somebody had given me an out.
The escape hatch?
Yeah. Because I sat there and slogged through 4 hours of,
Of pain.
Pain. Emotional pain.
Sounds like not a lot of fun.
No.
So what about you, Camden?
So I think that having consistent safety tools and consistent facilitation is really important, and that's kind of what we're sounds like we're all talking about. Is you tell everybody what the tools in place are, what your expectations are, and then you follow through with that consistently across the board. It doesn't matter if you're friends or strangers or whoever shows up to your convention game. It doesn't matter what type of story you're telling. You set expectations and you follow through.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my subtle expectation settings is that I wear my Geek Pride pin. Like it's not on. Like I have a patch on my old bag, but I actually wear the pin. So I've got the rainbow. I've got the rainbow D20 on, like right here, as also a sign. Like, yes, you are sitting down at the table of middle-aged white dude, but like. I've got that. I've got my rainbow dice, not my black, not like my black and red dice. I have my rainbow, but for me, that's like a subtle, that's a subtle way of saying, like, yes, look, I am queer. Like, I don't have to announce it, but at least, like, when you see it, like, you'll be like, oh, okay, like, middle-aged white guy got, hopefully I'm not getting, that's always my fear, right? It's like, people are going to sit down and be like, who's this Grognar motherfucker? Right? Because I look like Grognar motherfucker. I'm like 40 something years old. I came up in the hobby in the exact same time.
Damn 6 foot tall guy.
Right, 6 foot. I'm a big guy. I am all of those things, right? So I am always super nervous. Like that is the thing I don't want to come off as, but I also don't want to be like announcing it, right? Like, okay, I'm queer, everyone. Are we all good? Like I don't want to do that either. But like I do like to have some, just some note that when people sit down, they just oh, okay, we don't have to make a deal out of it. Just flying a little flag,
Yep.
And I wish, and I had said this once before on the internet, I wish there was some sort of, almost like an agreement. Of these are tenets we all believe in about running games, and that if you did you could put this pin or whatever that says I run a safe table, and it means the following thing, so that people who were worried about that at a convention could look for
Well, that's one of the things I like about the shifts that you're starting to see in convention culture is they set those expectations from an organizational level,
Yep.
which then you walk to the table level and the expectations are that is going to be followed through with. And beyond that, the organization has said, hey, here are the tools that if that doesn't happen.
So the stepwise progression of that I really liked was I remember the year Metatopia put tools on the table, but even better, last year when I went to Breakout and I went to go run my first game at the GM table or at the gaming table, they were like, "Whoa, before you go, what safety tool are you going to use?
Yeah.
And can you explain it to me?" And I was like, and I laughed for a second because I'm like, oh, I'm all up on this safety shit. But I was like, yeah, no problem. Like, here's the ones like, here's what I'm going to use, right? And it was, but it's like you said, like, it was baked in right there. Like, you, like, proved, like, it's not even just lip service. Like, it's not even just that they're going to be X cards at the table. Prove to us that you actually can use one of these things.
And I'll admit, when that happened to me last year at Breakout, there was like a fraction of a second where, and it's the only time, literally the only time that it's ever happened to me at a game convention. But I was like, do you know who the fuck I am?
I run the sad games. I'm all over this shit.
But then that hubris faded away, and then I explained it just like I should, which I think that expectation is super great and super healthy too.
5 years ago, I wrote a chapter on a book on in a book on game mastery about safety. But sure, let's talk about it. But no, I mean, but it's good. That's I think the best example I've ever seen of it being passed down. I think Games on Demand is also another group.
Yeah, it also just gives you guys a chance to demonstrate to other people what it means to do this thing correctly.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So, how do we foster a positive play culture in our regular gaming groups?
I think there's actually a challenge to this, right? Because regular gaming groups often become your friends. And so, like, I know for me, like, my past group of friends, like, it was not a good culture. Right, I have a much better set of friends now. Like, it's a much better culture. But
also, I don't necessarily think in that period of your life you were trying to foster a positive table culture.
No,
it was something that we weren't really even conscious of. It was we were oblivious.
I wasn't aware.
We just did the thing.
I wasn't aware of my privilege. I barely had an understanding of how that even operated, and I wasn't playing in too many public spaces. I was very insular, and it was literally basement of white guys.
Yeah, not having the experience of public games where the mix of people is just greater just by the very nature. That you're insulated. I grew up with a table of a mix of males and females. My sister played, and another guy's sister played, and we never had any issues. I had the privilege of having a pretty decent table. We bagged on each other and stuff like that, but we didn't really do anything that would be considered toxic. So the experience I had when I first heard that people were having problems at their tables, I'm like, wow. I'm like, that's got to be terrible.
Well, Bob, you were one of the kindest, most gentlest, nicest people I've ever met my entire life.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yes. that's just a fact.
Yeah, and the people that I played with, we all basically, we're all very similar.
Which is probably why you're getting rolled up on in Phil's group for a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, because my group was rough.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some rough personalities. There were some jockeying for dominance and things like that where people got trampled.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, we also had some kick-ass games in there mixed in with all the bad stuff, but that doesn't excuse the fact that there was bad stuff there.
The one thing I can say is at least for the most part, none of that spilled out onto anyone else.
Well, that's good.
It stayed in a basement and didn't actually hurt anyone else. So I don't make any excuses for it, but at least it could have been worse.
Yep.
We could have been going out to cons and playing games. The most toxic elements of that group never liked to play games at cons. So it was actually kind of safe.
I wonder why.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think, and I just saw Boudet just said the same thing that I was thinking about. Like, it's hard when it's your friends to sometimes affect culture change. Mm-hmm. Like, it's one thing to go to a table of strangers and say, okay, here's the expectations for how we're playing today. And, open door policy, leave if you don't like it. It's a different thing when these are people like you've kind of come up with, and especially especially if you're trying to change to be positive and they know you like from quote back in the day. Mm-hmm. Like, it's hard to sometimes escape. Like, it helped for my group that we kind of just lost a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Like, we just kind of,
ways.
But I mean, we lost them and we didn't have to take them with us. And we basically just made new groups out of the remainder. Like, that was way easier than if we had tried, and I don't think we would have successfully done it, but if we had tried to affect a permanent change in that group. Yeah. Like, it was just one of those things where it's like, well, this is better, torch it.
It wasn't even that. Like, they didn't want to change.
Well, they didn't, right? I mean, like, that was, like, that's part of the problem. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's, at some point, like, if you don't want to change, then you just need to go.
Yes.
Like, if you don't want to, it's just kind of how communities work, right? Like, 'cause we're talking about culture, right? It's just kind of how culture works. If you don't want to adjust to the culture that is being presented, then you have to go away. Mm-hmm. Like, I would prefer that not be the case. That's, like, the last thing that I want to happen. But that is what generally happens. Like, if you do not fit in here, then you go find other people to fit in with.
Right, and the balancing part to that is, right, like, and I know this is what you mean, but I'm gonna say it for clarity's sake. We mean that in a positive way, because there's a very bad way to also do that to people.
We are going to give you every opportunity, and hopefully you will take every opportunity to become the best version of yourself that you possibly can be.
Because the bad version of that is, you're a female player, you come to a table full of guys, and it's like, hey, we always joke around like that. You just have to get used to us telling like inappropriate dick jokes all the time.
I am making this statement from the point of view of hopefully that we're creating a positive, healthy table culture.
But there is, I mean, there is the negative version of that.
Yeah, there is. Like,
and I know that in my old game groups, and not that I think that any of the women who played in our groups were ever unsafe, because it certainly wasn't that. But uncomfortable at times, I'm sure. Like, I'm sure we did a shitty job of that.
So let me ask you. So, like, make sure that I'm just checking myself. Okay. Use you to check myself. The idea is, like, we will give people like this every opportunity to be informed and to change, and then at that point, like, if they are just going to be belligerent and not listen and not actually adhere to the safe space and whatnot and harmful, then we just have to push them to the outside.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be there has to be two people to build that sort of trust.
Yeah. I mean, you can't just tolerate stuff forever.
No.
Eventually there's a line where you just have to be like, you're done. Like, we can't do this. And unless you demonstrate some sort of actual change in your behaviors, then you cannot be a part of what we're doing.
Yeah. I remember Bob and I having that talk about our old game group. Like, I remember Bob and I saying, like, I don't think they're all going to make it. Like, I think you and I are going to make it. Like, but I don't think I don't want to call anyone out in particular, but like, I mean, Bob and I had that discussion. Like, I don't think this is going to happen. Yeah. Like, we're not going to save ever.
And
like,
part of it just came down to play style and game choice for what they enjoyed playing that didn't match up with what ours was. And when you have two people that want to go this way and two people that want to go that way, right off the bat, you're going to have issues. Uh-huh. And you can only compromise so much from either direction before you're just like, we're just not. And then you add in some of the other stuff, and it's just like,
Well, there becomes a point where the gap gets so big that any compromise, no one's happy with. The true power in compromise is finding a compromise where, when you're done compromising, both people have given, and both people are happy with the results that they've given. But if that gap gets too wide and you come this far and the person is like, that's not enough, and that person goes this far and you're like, that's not enough, you're never going to get there.
Well, there's no compromise then.
Well, if you accept it, right? Like,
everybody's still unhappy.
Exactly.
It doesn't foster a positive play culture.
Right. And that's the problem, right? You can't have that. You can't have compromise where you're bitter at compromising.
Yeah.
And on the like, as Bob said, on the game side of the problem with that culture was I was shifting in the kinds of games I wanted to run, And part of the group was like, no, we want you to run crunchier games. And I'm like, that's totally not going to happen.
Yeah. At that point in time, we were playing Dungeon World a lot.
Yeah.
While you were trying to run crunchier games.
Well, the compromise I got to, which I eventually like just canned the group over, was I wanted to play Fate. They wanted to play something crunchier, and the only thing they would agree to was Mindjammer.
That book's a little thick.
500, it's 500 pages of Fate.
Like I said, it's a little thick.
Right.
Fate
And I got to a
that's
point
doorstop.
I was reading it, and I'm like, what am I doing?
It's an 8.5 by 11 book too, if I remember.
8.5 by 11, 500 pages.
Yeah.
Of
Now-
Fate. I don't like. I'm
It's
not.
like, how do you make a Fate book that big?
Well, you know the Fate fractal. You basically put it into everything.
Yep, everything
right?
gets to be fractalized.
Right. But I got to a point where I was reading it. I was like, this is not working. I'm not running. And that's what I did. I had to actually take that move and like I can't say preemptively because it was like in the middle of setting up a game, but I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not running games, blah, blah, blah. And then like went and grabbed Bob and was like, come with me.
We're getting out of here, kid.
He reached out for me, and I was like, I'm on my way already.
like, come on, let's go. This is
he
done.
reached and Bob was back there somewhere.
Like, what are you waiting for, Phil? Come on.
Yeah.
So you want to tell me about Group Session 0, Camden?
Yeah, so I mean, and this is a slightly different situation where then if you've been playing with your friends for a long time and you realize that there's a change that needs to be made. But whenever I'm starting a new group, I think it's a really good idea to sit down before session 0 of your game, have a session 0 for your group. You know, what it is that people are looking for from this game, what's acceptable, what's unacceptable, what directions everyone would like it to go, the tone, all of those things. Set those expectations early. And sometimes when I have brought people in that are new to a group, I'll invite them out for coffee and I'll have that conversation ahead of time so that there isn't the pressure of all of these people that have already been gaming together. And then you still have a conversation when they come in and, you know, hey, what are we doing? I think that whenever possible, bringing people in at the beginning of a storyline or a game or something like that is super valuable as well, because then you all get to set those expectations and that culture like right up front.
Yeah, I think anytime that you can be social before you start gaming, like know the people, then play the game. It goes back to that first thing about like you can't separate people from the game.
Yeah.
Because if I think you're a jerk in real life, I really don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't care how great your character is when we get to the table.
I don't care if you only have 3 people in your town, whatever, to play games with. If one of them is a jerk, I just don't play with them.
Yeah.
I know it's tough because there's that pressure, right? Like, I mean, there's absolutely, and I've heard many, many stories. Like, I only stayed with this group because I wanted to play more than anything else, and it's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful, and you're right. Like, ideally, yes, don't do that. But some people like are so desperate to have the experience, and maybe they don't have access to good internet or whatever. Like, it's hard. But I'm with you. Like, you should not. You should never play with anyone who makes you unsafe. You really shouldn't play with anyone who makes you uncomfortable.
Yep. 100% agree.
And have people done it? Absolutely. Like,
I've done it. I mean, I think all of us have.
I've done it.
yeah.
I just won't anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I would rather not play a game now at this point in my life than be stuck in a situation like that.
I mean, we're fortunate. We're in an urban environment where
have
internet
everywhere,
is good. Like, if I have to go play online and I can't play a table, like face-to-face table game, I can go do that.
I will find a freaking pen pal and play by mailing back and forth. If I have
I'll dig out my rules for how to turn Dungeon, the board game, into D&D if you want to play by yourself. Because I did that when I was a kid because I didn't have any friends who played.
Because
in the
my
beginning.
pen pal game will be more enjoyable than the jerk that I'm playing.
You'll be
where I'm
looking
miserable.
forward to every letter
I
that
know,
comes
right?
Yeah,
instead of. Yeah.
There's always a way just to solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever the problem might be.
Well, and that's part of why I enjoy being here too. Is, you know, I look back at teenage me who didn't think I had any options, and for us to be able to sit here and go, you can do better, and you deserve better, and to hear that, you know, hopefully somebody out there in internet land gets to hear that, and they're like, holy snot, I actually do deserve better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. I mean, I really think what you said was really good about the social part, and I think it is in your home group. Like, I would never play with somebody that I also wouldn't hang out and have dinner with.
Yeah, my the people that I play games with here regularly are my friends.
Yeah.
Like,
And I have meals. Like, I mean, I always have dinner before my games.
so
Like,
here's you're right. Like that's part of the thing. Like we do it before the podcast too. We wish Camden would join us more often. But
he does family stuff.
he's got
It's
family.
okay.
Yeah, we understand that. I used to be the person that would build groups to play certain games. I'm not that anymore. I just rather play with my friends.
Yeah.
Like I don't care about the other side of it anymore. So like I play with Drew Smith because I want to.
Yeah, because it's fun.
And
'cause
Jerry and
Drew's-
Bob, like that's Jerry, Bob, and Drew. Like what a great time that is. Because it's like, I mean, Drew lives in Pennsylvania. My friend Drew, he was in my wedding, Camden, and like he used to live here, and he was one of the first people I after I got divorced that I joined up with him for one of our gaming groups, and we played for like every week for like 2 years. And had dinner together. Him and his wife came to Mexico for my wedding. Like it was wonderful. Like he's one of my best friends in the world.
He's a cool dude.
Yep.
Yeah. So like we still play games every other week because my friend, right? Like those are the people I play with, you and Bob, right? I play with a good chunk of the Lake Effect board, and the one person that doesn't play in that game is Gilgore, and he plays in the other Sunday night game.
Yeah, he's got He's
So like
in the
I
other
mean,
group.
it's like I just play with my friends.
And I think when you create that culture at the beginning, even when people are new and it's at you're early in that, you might not know each other well, you set yourself up to create those long-lasting bonds that pay, in your life in general as well as at the
Yeah.
table.
I will talk about I will talk a little bit about this, unless Bob, you have something you want to say about it, about creating a positive play culture in a regular group, especially from a starting position, because I've done this too.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much nailed everything that I would have talked about. So go ahead and.
So I think one of the most important things is to sort of take that in not necessarily the leadership role, but it's sort of a leadership role where you are demonstrating consistently the kind of behaviors that you want to see at the table. Like you cannot be asking people to do things that you will not do yourself. so there's that. So you can create a play culture by demonstrating the kind of culture that you want at the table and the kind of play that you want at the table. So that's to me that's one of the biggest things. The other thing is to don't let things slip through without anything being said that you wouldn't want to have in your culture. Like you cannot just let things go. Like
it's okay. That's so and so. He
Yeah.
he occasionally makes
you
sexist
can't
remarks.
let that happen. And when even when things like little things get by, like you should like put a marker on it, call it out. Like you don't have to be harsh about it, but you need to be like, I don't know if that's so good, right? Like maybe we shouldn't be doing those things.
Yep.
And then get the tenor of the table, and if you have to, then have the conversation about it. Like stop and talk about it. And this is over the course of time too. This could be 7 months down in your game. A thing happens. Don't let it go just because you're all friends at this point. Like talk about it. I mean, we've all talked about things.
Yep.
And while it's good to be overt in our actions, then you can also use subtext to like sort of push your play culture agenda if you want to. Like that is sort of taking it up a notch. And it sounds a little subvertive, but it's really not. Like it's just you're still just doing this demonstration thing, but on a different level inside of the game. Like it helps you guide your games to be sort of the safe, enjoyable spaces that you want them to be. Like don't make every person that's an NPC in your game a straight white dude.
Yeah.
Man,
Right?
that's my goal every day now.
Yeah, like even on a different level. Like if you want your game to be, if you're playing with a bunch of people who are used to playing sort of tactical war gamey type stuff, but you want a little bit more story in your game or whatever. Like you can push that kind of play culture too, and make that okay for people to help them become comfortable with it, because it's all about comfort level, right? Like there was a group of players that were transitioning from 3rd edition to 4th edition. I know, right? Like tactical game to tactical game, but I was getting into playing story games, so. While we were playing 4th edition, I was giving them the tactical stuff that they wanted. I was constantly putting in story choice decision points for them to be making in character constantly that would have ramifications going forward. And the one woman who was playing in the game, Allie, like she had never played a game like that before and not really played much of a game at all before, but like we kept talking and she kept wanting that stuff even though she was having a hard time with it. So I just kept feeding it to her until she got comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But that was what Ken was saying, like constantly talking, constantly having the back and forth dialogue, and constantly presenting the kind of game and play style and culture, which is one, open communication, positive, fostering, making people understand that, your decisions are going to have impacts, both positive and negative in game, and that your actions actually matter, and not letting the stupid stuff go without it being bad for them. right? Like you don't want and the negative stuff go without it being necessarily bad for them in game, and like if it happened as far as like players talking to each other, that it was stopped and talked about. So those are the places that I would go with that.
Yeah. I mean, I still put my X card out on the table for my game with like Bob, Glenn, and Tony. Like I know everybody's boundaries, but we like it's still part of the culture, right? Like, and I don't say that in a handoffish way. I'm saying you don't let those things go lax. Like
Correct.
We said our table's going to be about safety. Even though we all know how not to push each other's buttons, I'm still putting this X card on the table. Like, and we will all make sure it's there. I definitely think that's important. I think that I think a good play culture also celebrates its victories.
Yeah.
So you compliment each other on good play.
Yeah.
So when Glenn's really good about this. Glenn will pop online Monday morning after our game, and he'll be like, "Oh man, that game was great," or "So and so, like you totally killed it," kind of thing. I try to do it. I try to do it almost as soon as possible, like at the table, like when somebody really nails a scene or something. Like as soon as that scene ends or something, I'll be like, "Oh my god, that was that was incredible." Like I think there's it's not just about coming down on bad behavior. Like we spent a lot of time talking about curbing bad behavior, but there's a lot about building up, especially if players are starting to. If they're starting out and they are or switching, like they're going from tactical to story games, and they're like they're like the little deer on wobbly legs kind of thing. The more you can build that up, the more you can give them confidence. Like, oh no, like that story scene was great. You were fantastic. And the same, like I've seen like with introverted people, I've seen that same thing where people aren't sure. And just giving them the insurance, like, oh, you jumped in at like exactly the right time in that scene. Like your timing was perfect.
Build people up, don't tear people down.
That helps.
Yeah, celebrate the good stuff. There's plenty. When it's working, this stuff is actually a lot of fun, and it's worth remembering and sharing that with everyone.
There's one more question. Do we do it, or do we just move on because it's like 9:30?
If it's 9:30, we can move on.
It's such an interesting question.
All right, well, ask it.
How as designers do we build this idea into games? Positive play culture.
Right? I mean, you can't force it.
And is it our responsibility to do so?
It is our responsibility.
I absolutely think it's our
last part.
responsibility. Yeah.
Well, thank you, because it is our responsibility.
Yeah, well, but there's a lot of people, a lot of really well-known people in the industry that don't think it's their responsibility.
I think they're wrong. I mean, I'll just flat out say it. Like, if you design a game that enforces bad behavior, you are complicit to creating bad behavior.
If you write a game that doesn't do either,
then you are negligent. Not complicit, but you are negligent. If you did not do anything to state certain things about your game, and your game goes off in a direction, you can't just wash your hands of it. Especially if, listen, designers, if you don't know how your game's going to be taken the wrong way, I mean, have you ever heard my design for the game I refused to make?
I don't think so.
One day I made this game called Microaggressions, and it was a game. It was what is it? Cards Against Humanity kind of thing.
Okay.
Where one player plays the female who's like, went to dinner with coworker, and then the other people have cards of like, and talked about masturbation all through dinner, right? Like plays like all the terrible like things that dudes have done, kind of thing. And
inflicting trauma of the game. Okay,
well,
I got it.
Well, the idea was to demonstrate like these are the awful things that women have to endure.
And
like
you should not do these things.
Right. But the problem is
you can't make that game.
There's no way this game will get played. There's no way to only get this game played correctly.
Yeah.
Like, it will wind up in somebody's house party with drinks as people are sitting around laughing about the contents of the cards.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the responsible thing to do was, I'm burying this.
Yes.
Like, I will not make this game. So, no, I think ethically, you have a responsibility. Like, I'm writing Turning Point right now. Send and I have both scoured the safety chapter of that book. And Kate's coming in to not only write a chunk of it, but to actually review it at one more level, because I think I have I think, I keep saying but it's only because I'm the one that was doing the primary writing. But we have a responsibility to not leave people hanging in a game that we purposely designed for bleed. Like we purposely made this game so you will bleed during the game. It is irresponsible of us not to put to go above and beyond to make sure that the game is safe.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's
there
move soapbox over.
That's why I asked the question this time instead of answering.
Move soapbox over to side, climb down from soapbox.
Is there a responsible way then to make vampire?
I think the hardest part to vampire is that the mythology of vampire is so tied up in the rapiness of traditional vampires.
Well, that's...
You gotta if you could figure out a way to uncouple that, I think there is. It's I don't know. It's
Are
super
they vampires then though?
Well, that's a problem. Like
Yes,
if your character is defined by rapiness, should we still be playing this character in modern society?
Rapiness. So let me take it. This is a serious question.
No, I'm with you.
The idea of being a vampire is that you are essentially a predator that is preying upon on people.
Yes.
And you are not necessarily a person though. So, but you still are a person because you were from that. So therefore, it is all about like you are preying on people in non-consensual ways, and it's all about control. And the people that you are preying on, including other vampires, have no say often in what happens to them because that's part of the play of the game. So, is there actually a responsible, safe way to make that game?
All right. Well, so
I'm going to give the big sigh because I'm not sure.
So, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with what's the game about and what's the emotional intent. No, I mean, even inside, given all that predator-prey relationship, okay, that's the world we're living in. That's the situation. These are the kind of the power dynamic. But what's the game about? Is the game about the horror of that? Is it the horror of removing another being's consent? Or is it about the power?
Yeah, is it celebrating it?
Is it celebrating that dynamic?
See, now that's interesting because if it's about that, the horror of that, then you can probably make that game you can probably make that game in a way that is at least, probably make that game in a way that is safe.
The problem with vampire is that it tries to do both of those things. It under-delivers on the humanity part. Right? And it over-delivers on the coolness of the cool shit you get to do after you take somebody's blood.
Well, I mean, and the fact is there are decades of a game that's about that power dynamic. And that a lot of people, to be perfectly honest, have enjoyed playing and exploring.
I ran the shit out of it.
Okay, but now, hey, welcome to the future where there's self-driving cars and pocket computers. How about if since that already exists, we make something new that tells a different story?
Yeah.
Sure. I just, because, I mean, I don't disagree with you, right? Like, sure, let's make something new that tells a different story. But that is stories in general are constantly retold over time.
No, but you can tell vampire, you can tell that same thing in an entirely different way.
Without making it a big power trip.
You can also tell the predator-prey and the horror of being a predator story in an entirely different way, too.
I think that at the very least, if you're a vampire, and again, I have not read the book, and I know that Jacqueline Burke wrote a big safety chapter for it, and I have not read it, but I do think you have a responsibility of saying, hey, listen, these are vampires. Here are some content warnings, right? This thing walks into non-consensual violence. Like, it can't help itself but to walk into non-consensual violence. If you have a problem with that, please don't even pick this book up. Like, don't even flip through it. Just like, you have that responsibility as a publisher.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Now, should you there's a thing. I am hesitant to say it because I didn't do my due diligence to read through it, but I think I saw an article today go by about a game on Steam that is challenging Steam's laissez-faire, like we don't filter content of games, and it is like literally the rape game. Right?
Yeah, no thank you.
And there's a
Look, man,
like
there are already some rapey games on Steam, but if this is actually the rape game, that's pretty bad.
I hesitate because when I first read it, I was like, this has got to be bullshit. Like, I need to read like 3 more articles before I'm sure that this is real. But I think Tim tweeted it, and Tim wouldn't.
No, he wouldn't if it wasn't.
Right, Tim. I'm pretty sure
Tim's
Tim
going to call it like he sees
Right.
it.
Yeah.
So I'm a little. So there is absolutely types of games publishers should not make. And Cam is right. Like, you should not make a game that celebrates taking away people's autonomy and consent and doing those terrible things. But can you make a game that talks about the horrors of being forced to do that because you are an inhuman monster? Like, there's a space for that, but it is also, you need to wrap that whole thing in bubble wrap, right? Like, you need content warnings, protections, and safety from the outside so that people don't accidentally walk into the game, and a whole bunch of safety inside the game so that in case something happens, like, people are also okay.
You know, it's the difference between Vampire and Bluebeard's Bride.
Yes.
Yeah, Bluebeard's Bride's awful, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Bluebeard's
but
Bride
safely awful.
It's specifically intentionally told and designed in a thoughtful way.
And I will say, like, I ran a lot of Vampire in the 90s, and there was a whole lot of non-consensual stuff that happened in it that today I would not run that game.
I was wondering if anybody was going to mention Bluebeard's Bride after I asked that question.
Yeah. But I think Bluebeard's Bride is responsible about it. It has safety. It has content warnings all over
I
it.
still want to play that game so bad.
And the game is about the horror of having that agency
Yeah.
and power removed.
Yes. Because you don't play
to
Blue.
the end because
you
it's
don't
not a
get-
happy ending.
Right.
regardless.
No.
You don't get to play Bluebeard.
No, you
No.
played. You played
Right.
a victim.
Like, you don't get to play Bluebeard. That game would be awful if it was told the other way around.
That does sort of like change the tenor of it, right? Like you're not playing the vampire, you're playing the victim.
That's a very different game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you played a game of vampire victims repeatedly, visited upon by vampires, like, that's
Well,
a
mean-
gruesome game to play. But
Bluebeard's Bride is kind of in the same vein.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
which is a gruesome game, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy it exists. I do actually want to play it one day, but it is a game that I know I will be fiercely uncomfortable through the entire experience, and I'm okay being uncomfortable for it. But I'm also aware of it. Like, that's the diligence that is the diligence that the publisher has done, is that even from this distance, I'm aware this game's going to be a challenge.
We're gonna do something we've never done before. We're gonna roll this last question over into the beginning of next show
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay.
because
Love it.
otherwise we're not gonna have an after.
Oh,
show.
it's good. It was a really good question. And Camden brought up the
And there's
really
more
good
stuff that I want to talk about.
the
concerning
responsibility parts. That's even better.
it. Like how to do it in your game book. We haven't talked about that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
either. So man, let's. I was gonna go to the conversation corner, but we're not gonna do that either. We're just gonna go to some Patreon shoutouts and then get to the after show because we, need to have. An
We'll
after
just
show
have
for
the
patrons.
conversation corner in the after show.
So if you want to hear the after show,
Uh-huh.
if you want to hear the conversation corner, you have to be a patron for $1 a month. And then get-
Just for this
you
week,
go.
we'll bring
Just
it back
for
next
this
week. We got deep tonight.
yeah.
Yeah.
I knew we were going to. That was
So, Patreon shoutouts. Eileen Barnes, the Duchess of Pandas Talking Games. Andy Olson, the Duke of Dice. Brian Kurtz, the Royal Doctor of Physic. Christopher Gray, the Spy Master of MMP. Craig Just Craig, the Lord of One Name. Donnie Harville, the Lord of the Slack Room. Eric Bonts, the Duke of Gators and the Lord of Beefness. Yeah, he gets 2 titles because he asked.
Yeah, well, you just have to ask.
GM Gerrymander, the Lord of the After Show, which will be there presently. Jesse Edmond, the Royal Doctor. John C. LeMay, the Guard at the End of the World. John Carney, the Court Necromancer. Kevin Lovecraft, the Royal Beard. Merrick Blackman, the Royal D&D Reviewer. Mike Dinos, the Inquisitor of Mark. Palladian, the Duke of Darkest Sons. P.K. Sullivan, the Queen's Royal Rocketeer. Rob Ebrezant, oh my god.
Misdirected Mark, word
How
scramble.
do I screw up Rob Ebrezato's name?
Seriously.
The Flatworm. Oh man, the Gauntlet of the Queen. Which Bob, who are you?
I am the Fist of the
That's
Queen.
awkward every time.
It's only awkward if you make
Yeah.
it awkward.
It's awkward. Robert Dorgan, the Dragon Lord of Down with D&D. Schmitty, the Keeper of the Labyrinth, who's finally seen Labyrinth, right? That's a
I believe
thing?
so.
Schmitty's finally seen
Oh,
Labyrinth.
yeah, I think they took care of it like the second they got home.
Nice. Toby sent it to the Baron of Britannia and Todd Crapper, the Prophet of Probability. I apparently had his name wrong in the in the list that one time because you called him the Dragon Lord of D&D on one of the Pandas Talking Games episodes.
Oh, because the list was
I
off.
said I had the list wrong. Did you not hear me just say that?
It was broke today.
I only caught it like a week ago, and I was like, I went to do it, and I'm like, wait, that's not that person's title, and I was like, oh no.
My bad, Todd. That was on me. Anyways, thank you everyone so much for listening.
If you are free Tuesday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's Time, come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
If you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcasts each week wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of the other shows on the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Advantage to Insight, Bone Stone and Obsidian, Pandas Talking Games, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy, The Gnomecast, the Wednesday Evening Podcast All-Stars, Zhangu Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
Woo.
After you have clarified what will pass for good culture in your group, leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly on email, mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Check out our Facebook group. Hit us up on Twitter. The show and the network is at Misdirected Mark. He's at Camden, at Robert M. Everson. I'm at DNA Phil, and always playing the best jazz hop in all of Buffalo, The Light 101.
All the time these days.
All the time.
That's what I write to.
If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP Down with D&D and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. And last but not least...
No. That's not last anymore. We haven't changed the copy yet.
Damn it! Zhangu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhangu Hustle. And last but definitely not least, Bonus Experience. And I don't have the link because it's not in the damn show notes.
It's at patreon.com/BXPcast. I'm pretty sure.
All right, we'll fix that. Patrons of MMP Down with D&D and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
You know, like free stuff from
Sometimes
get games.
Mark's
stuff.
half-eaten hamburger LARP.
Yeah.
Yeah, beating hamburger LARP.
And there might even be some Turning Point stuff in the not too distant future.
Probably will be.
Well, this has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
We out. Do 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 do. Welcome to the after show.
The after show.
The after show.
Oh, I cut out early, sorry.
Man, we are getting so much better at that.
We are.
Same way you get to Carnegie Hall, my friends.
There you go.
I mean, the better our harmony gets, the better the show has gotten over the course of time. There's almost like this readjustment period whenever we add somebody to the show or things change.
Well, you know what? Listen, we didn't talk about that in the show, but that is a thing, right? When you add somebody to a group, everybody changes.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have the same group and add a new person to it and expect the new, like, even if you expect the new person to completely conform to the group, that's not how groups work. Like, the new group gets something from the person who joins, and the person who joins gets something from the group. Anyway, that's good. That was a good topic. Like, that was
an awesome topic.
Yep.
I want to just throw something out here real quick, and I have to dig a little deeper just to make sure everything's kosher about this, but it sure looks like it. Apparently, according to this, Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, was bisexual.
Yeah?
And I'm like, that's awesome.
Somebody find out more about that.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's a whole thing here.
Neat.
And actually, I'll give you a tiny little quote here. In a conversation with one of his friends, the openly gay Dr. William Hirsch, Fred Rogers himself concluded that if sexuality was measured on a scale of 1 to 10, well, you know, I must be right smack in the middle because I have found women attractive and I have found men attractive. There's a quote right from Fred.
Give it up with Fred Rogers, man.
Get on with your bad self, Fred.
Like, Mr. Rogers is the gift, legitimately the gift that wholesomely keeps on giving.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
His postman, though, on the other hand. Do you not remember?
No, Mr. McFeely?
McFeely. Not the best name.
Well, that's his last name.
The actual guy's last name?
Yeah, I think it was. It was. I think
Also tragic for a kid's show.
Flat.
Come sit on Mr. McFeely's lap. Like, oh boy.
Rob Eberzado was "Won't You Buy My Neighbor." Oh, that's so bad.
That's funny.
It is funny.
It's funny because
Feely.
Yep.
So hey, everyone who's hating on the whole Critical Role Kickstarter thing, I think you could just stop. Like, it's not for a role playing game; it's for a TV show.
Yeah.
it's I mean, I had my whole thing about it today, right? Like, it's not. I mean, it's not it's not a demographic that's my demographic.
I haven't got to do the thing yet about it though. Like I keep seeing people complaining about it. Like, where's that? Why isn't that RPG money coming our way? Like, it's not for role playing game. It's for an animated movie at this point. An 88-minute long animated movie. I'm like, that's cool to me.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week with the idea that role playing game properties will start getting.
I mean, you did say that
people will start looking at that.
Yep.
Now, in looking into this, they tried to shop this idea for a show or a special to a bunch of different networks and things like that
Producers.
already, and nobody wanted to pick it up because D&D live stream, actual play, podcast characters, right? Like, that'll never sell. Well, I'm really hoping that they get to 100,000 backers so that networks will start looking a little bit harder at role playing game properties. So, I just don't want I don't want people to think that it was about a role-playing game thing. Because it's a role-playing game related thing, but it's not a role-playing thing. It is a story thing. This is an entertainment media thing. It just happens to be a role-playing game property, sort of.
No, but I mean, I'll say this because I totally had no problem understanding why people were upset about it. And there's a truth to indie game design, which is that nobody makes money like D&D makes money.
Yeah.
It isn't even D&D.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is that if you're wondering where the sour grapes came from, like if you want to know why people were upset, like what it comes out of is, and this consistently happens time and time again, like you can run a Kickstarter and struggle to get it funded, but if you run a D&D Kickstarter, like they tend to it's a volume difference.
But yeah, which is funny because it's nothing to do with D&D except for the fact that it was a D&D game.
Well, they're D&D personalities.
Sort of.
They are.
They're more than that.
But that's how they started.
No, that's not how they started. They started as being voice actors.
Okay,
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoon, super popular.
But those characters that are in the animated film, where are they from?
Well, those characters are from the stream, which are from a D&D game.
Yeah, so they're D&D adjacent. At the very least, they're D&D adjacent.
D&D adjacent.
But they're even more adjacent because they actually play D&D to play those characters.
Sure, absolutely. And Matt Mercer is widely thought of as being associated with Wizards of the Coast because of the streams, the stream of many eyes, the stream of whatever's. I get it, but this to me is cool because it's a media property. It's not the same thing. It's like the Veronica Mars movie.
Yeah,
me,
but
I think is neat.
I mean, I get you, but I also know that I've had my feels about D&D money versus indie money, right? Like, if I wanted to make money in RPGs, I would just go make PDFs of 10 awesome things to do with a gelatinous cube.
Man, last time I checked, they're making a Tales from the Loop TV show.
But here's the thing that's not fair about Tales from the Loop, because you keep referencing that one, but Tales from the Loop wasn't originally a role-playing game.
Yeah, it was just an art book.
It was an art book and a series of art by an artist who made a derivative, who made a role-playing game, who then also made a derivative and got a contract. So that property could have been It
could have been optioned from just the art book, but
it
probably wasn't.
Well, it
didn't have the story material for it until it had the role playing game.
No, it absolutely had the story material. Have you ever read the book?
No.
No. So those 3 books are not just art.
They have
he tells a story through them. Like that's kind of the cool thing. Like the game actually pulls a shit ton of stuff from the book to make up the game. Like I'm pretty sure Simon Stalling got the Amazon contract and not Modifius.
Sure.
Right? Like, or not Modifius, Free League.
It's still role-playing game tangential.
No, I'm with you. Listen, I think those things are great. And all I'm saying is that I have like, as a person who does not play D&D and as a person who does not design D&D stuff, everything about what I do is a magnitude smaller. It just is. And that's just harder. You make less money, you get less popularity, less people listen to your stuff, less people watch your stuff. It just is. Like, we had this great run with Avalon, but I'm putting all of our markers back to 300 backers when we do Turning Point. Because I can't guarantee we're going to get 700 backers again.
Sure.
Right? Like, we have to go back to indie space, which is lucky if we get 300. And that's hard. Like, you want to be as popular as D&D, you just aren't going to be.
Well, but that's true of almost every creative endeavor. I mean, if you look at music, for example, and I mean, you worked as a musician.
Sure.
That most of the people that are out there working and doing the grind and doing the hustle are not going to even make a living wage, let alone, be riding around in a private jet and, staying at fancy hotels.
Now, I should clarify my position. I'm perfectly happy that Critical Role backed that, that they're getting the backing to make this animated thing. I think it's really cool. I think it's neat. It's not my thing because I'm not involved in the stream. I'm not really interested in D&D. It doesn't really have anything to do with me. I was just stating that I have in the past have had those feelings about D&D.
I think that. So here's the thing. I think that the people that think this is D&D related are out of their mind. I think it's more a factor of the fact that it's entertaining, and people who are not necessarily into Dungeons and Dragons tend to watch it and then come to D&D. I think that is where 70% of that audience comes from.
Yeah, I mean, listen. You can always say that the rising tide raises all ships, right? Like,
not even that.
The more people,
but people are complaining about this being D&D money. Like, I don't think it's that at all.
Well,
I just think that happens to be the game that they're playing.
I also don't think that if you went and put $100 down on Critical Role, that you aren't going to back other Kickstarters. I mean, most people who back Kickstarters back multiple Kickstarters. Oh, sure. Like, you didn't lose, they didn't take your money, right? Like, I mean, I'm already backing 5 Kickstarters this month. Like, I got a problem this month, because it's February and everybody started their Kickstarters. There's money. And a lot of times we're all passing around the same $10 bill in the indie community, right? Like, we all back each other. We all back each other's shit, right? So no, I get it, but to be clear, I'm actually perfectly fine with it. It's just not a thing. I have nothing connected to it, so it just I don't know. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'll probably watch it when it comes out. I don't know.
Not connected to it. It's the idea that these things that are related to the role-playing game industry are starting to find their way into media finally.
Right, and let's be perfectly clear that if somebody wants to give me $4.5 million to go make an animated film of Long Live the Queen, I'm in.
I'm still waiting for the One Child's Heart limited series on Netflix.
There you go.
6 episodes.
I'm not mad if that happens. But
content warnings, and I'm going to have some breaks in between.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, I mean, you could not find more of a hippie indie story game than One Child's Heart. But I have a lot of Critical Role superfans that sit down at the table and are happy to, that are really excited about those things too. And I think that there's a lot of crossover in what happens. And I think that because Critical Role, which isn't something that I watch, but mostly just because I don't have a lot of time to watch anything, I think that it drives that narrative story, collaborative storytelling idea that does a lot of good for all of us. If it was, 4 grognards sitting around rolling dice and arguing about grapple rules, then you'd have a point about, these people are never going to invest in Turning Point.
Right. But
I think that the idea of people who want to consume a collaborative story experience.
I mean, that is my demographic,
yeah.
Right?
I mean, I'm a little confused. In the chat, it's some people are talking about you can't we're discussing that you can't be a fan of all 3 things, or one doesn't have to do with the you were saying one doesn't have to do with the other. My stance is I'm glad to see role-playing game related things creeping into entertainment media.
Yeah, I'm happy for that.
Yeah, that is where I'm at. Right
no, I'm happy for that, and I think that your trend is right. The idea that, look, every streaming service is going to need more TV shows, and they're going to need to go find more ideas. So if they start dipping into the role-playing pool and optioning things, like, I couldn't be happier for that, for the industry, for our friends who make really cool stuff and have made really cool worlds, all of that, right? Like, I would love to see all of that. I would love to partake in parts of that as well. I also have, to be clear, there is never a case where I ever believe that if you're a fan of X, you can't be a fan of Y.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm
Like
not
those. I don't stand for.
But I'm not even thinking of, like, you were talking about Turning Point. As far as, like, well, you compared it to Avalon, which is fine. Like, I don't even think of Critical Role as being necessarily like a Dungeons and Dragons thing.
If you're talking about the Kickstarter, it's not.
Yeah, I think of it as being a media entertainment thing for the fans of Critical Role, and then people like me who love animated features.
Sure.
Because I backed it. Because I love me some anime. Like, come on, I subscribe to DC Universe because I like watching all the movies that are animated films on DC Universe.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not taking money from me, right? Like, it's making a thing. Like, they're making a thing, and they're making a thing that honestly isn't a thing that our community actually can make. Like, they're not making the Critical Hit role-playing game and then pulled in $4.5 million.
Yeah, because that actually happened. It's called the Tal'Dorei campaign setting by Green Ronin, and it did okay. Like, it wasn't great.
Right.
But, like, this, on the other hand, this is actually, to me, more in their wheelhouse. Like, oh, we're a bunch of cartoon voice actors. Let's make a cartoon. Right? Like,
let's go get somebody to make us a cartoon.
Well, I mean, they're doing all the voice acting for it.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
For a
Like,
lot
they
of it,
need somebody to do the animation.
Yeah, so they went and got a really great animation studio to help them do it. The people that do, like, the Venture Brothers and other things like that. And the animation looks great.
Yeah.
But that's like my point. Like, I'm always so confused by the people who are, like, angry about that from a role-playing game point of view when it's very little to do with role-playing games.
In this case, I agree. The D&D thing, I mean, I would like to say I've transcended, but it gets me from time to time too. I seriously, like, I would like to say that I've transcended that shit, but I haven't.
So Avi in the chat room actually said, and I agree, it's just they're the Taylor Swift of gaming, and there's a lot of hate.
Yeah, that's not inaccurate, I suppose.
Yeah.
They're.
I mean, people have seemed to have really worked hard this week to call out Critical Role on literally everything.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some valid.
There are some valid ones.
There are absolutely some valid complaints, but them earning bank for this.
10 o'clock.
Yeah, we gotta go. I gotta go to work.
Yeah.
All right.
Man, this whole week we should just do part 2 of the show because I feel like we've only like scratched the surface of all that good shit for
truth
culture.
Well, we've got one question for next week, so that should
like
take most of it.
Yeah, the new format of the show is so much easier to write. Like, throw grenades in the room, just sit around and talk about them.
We'll be in our new studio next week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Next week we're going to Studio 4.
See y'all.
It is later. Studio 4 or 5. I think
Studio umpteenth. I
don't
know. We'll do a rundown next week of all the.
We have to have an orientation before.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks for coming out. We love y'all.
Everyone.
Oh, we're still not done streaming. I'm gonna stop it. I swear. Here we go. Stop.